The massive view screen aboard the Earth diplomatic station showed the approaching alien ships. They looked like giant flowers made of light, each vessel easily twice the size of Earth's largest space station. Admiral James Walker stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his weathered face revealing nothing as he watched humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council unfold. Next to him, Ambassador Thomas Reed adjusted his uniform collar for the 10th time in as many minutes. The ambassador was a skilled diplomat with 30 years of experience. But this was different. This wasn't just another nation or colony. This was humanity's first step into a much larger universe. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. Her voice echoed through the suddenly silent command center. The screen flickered, and Walker's breath caught in his throat. The aliens were beautiful in a terrifying way. Their bodies seemed to be made of crystalline structures that glowed from within. The leader, who introduced itself as the High Speaker of the Starborn, had a form that reminded Walker of a jellyfish made of starlight. Children of Earth, the High Speaker's voice came through the translators, carrying a tone that made Walker's military instincts flare with warning. It was the same tone he'd heard from colonial powers in old Earth videos. We welcome you to the greater galactic community. Ambassador Reed stepped forward, spreading his arms in a gesture of welcome. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we are honored to. Yes, the High Speaker interrupted, its light patterns shifting to something darker. The formalities are unnecessary. We have watched your development for some time now. Your species has shown concerning tendencies. Walker noticed how the other council members in the transmission, beings of living metal, gaseous forms contained in elaborate shells, and what appeared to be a sentient collection of magnetic fields, all moved their attention to Earth's visible military installations. Concerning tendencies, Reed asked, maintaining his diplomatic smile despite the interruption. Your militarization of space. Another council member spoke, this one appearing as a cloud of golden particles. Your focus on weapons, on armor, on means of destruction. It is primitive. Walker felt his jaw tighten, but remained silent. Earth's Space Force was purely defensive, created after the Mars colony crisis had shown them the need for space-based security. The Council exists to guide younger species away from such barbaric paths. The High Speaker continued. We will help you evolve beyond these warlike instincts. You will submit your military vessels for decommissioning and your weapon designs for deletion. The temperature in the command center seemed to drop 10 degrees. Reed's diplomatic smile finally faltered. With all due respect, Reed began. Earth's Space Force exists purely for defense. We have no aggressive intentions toward. You misunderstand. The High Speaker's form pulsed with what Walker recognized as amusement. This is not a negotiation. The Council has made its decision. You will disarm, or we will be forced to. Assist your compliance. Walker stepped forward, speaking for the first time. Are you threatening Earth? The High Speaker's light patterns shifted to something almost pitying. Admiral Walker, is it? No, this is not a threat. Think of it as inevitable guidance. We are your elders. We have guided 1,000 species before you. Some required more forceful guidance than others. The implications hung in the air like a storm cloud. Walker looked at the readings on a nearby console. The Council's ships were armed, heavily armed. Their weapons were like nothing Earth had seen before, but the energy readings were clear enough. You have 1 Earth month to begin the decommissioning process, the High Speaker declared. We will return then to oversee your transition to a more enlightened state. The transmission cut off before Reed could respond. The command center erupted into urgent whispers and hurried movements. Walker turned to Reed, their eyes meeting in silent communication. They both understood what hadn't been said. Earth had just been given an ultimatum by beings who viewed humanity as children playing with dangerous toys. Get me a direct line to the Security Council, Reed said quietly. And Walker, call everyone. It's time for Operation Dark Forge. Walker nodded grimly. The aliens thought humanity would roll over and submit to their demands. They thought Earth would give up its ability to defend itself on the word of self-proclaimed elders. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Deep within the asteroid belt, inside a hollowed-out space rock, twice the size of Manhattan, Chief Engineer Marcus Stone walked through what would soon become humanity's greatest achievement. The massive construction bay stretched for miles, currently holding the skeletal frame of what would become the EDS Thunderchild. "Progress report," he called out to his team, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. The sounds of welding and machinery filled the air, a constant reminder that they were racing against time. Laura, his lead designer, brought up a holographic display showing the ship's specifications. "We've finished the main void steel plating for the bow section. The molecular structure is holding better than expected. It's actually absorbing energy from our testing lasers at 300% the predicted rate." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. The void steel was their greatest breakthrough, a metal that didn't just resist energy weapons but absorbed them, growing stronger with each hit. The aliens' fancy light-based weapons wouldn't know what hit them. "The quantum core?" he asked, walking around the massive engine housing that would power the dreadnought. "Online and stable," Tom, the head of engineering, reported from his station. "We've managed to hide its energy signature using the asteroid's natural radiation. Unless they stick their sensors right up against our hull, they won't detect a thing." Similar scenes were playing out in 12 other asteroid bases across the belt. Earth had prepared for this possibility for years, hiding its true military development from prying eyes. The public bases and ships were just for show. The real fleet was being born here, in the darkness between planets. Marcus climbed up to the observation deck, overlooking the Thunderchild's growing form. The ship was huge, designed to inspire terror in those who thought humanity was just a child playing at war. Its angular black hull would absorb light rather than reflect it, making it look like a piece of space had come alive and learned to hunt. "Message from command," his communicator chirped. "Admiral Walker wants an update on the mass driver arrays." "Tell him they're ahead of schedule," Marcus replied, watching as another massive section of void steel armor was moved into place by robotic arms. "The targeting systems are better than we hoped. We can hit a coin from 1,000,000 miles out." The mass drivers were another surprise they had in store. While the aliens relied on energy weapons, humanity had perfected the art of throwing very heavy things very fast. The laws of physics were universal, and a tungsten rod moving at a significant fraction of light speed would ruin anyone's day, fancy energy shields or not. "Sir," Laura called out urgently, "we're picking up unusual radiation signatures from the Jupiter sector. Looks like the Council sent some scouts earlier than expected." Marcus quickly checked the sensor readings. The alien ships were still far out, probably just doing long-range scans. But they couldn't risk detection, not yet. "Initiate blackout protocols," he ordered. All across the asteroid base, external activities ceased. The massive construction bays fell into carefully managed patterns that would look like normal asteroid behavior to any watching eyes. They'd practiced this drill hundreds of times. Within minutes, the entire operation was invisible to outside observers. The only sign of their presence was a slight warmth in the asteroid's core, easily explained by natural radioactive decay. Marcus looked at his watch. They had 22 days until the Council's deadline. The Thunderchild was nearly complete, and her sister ships weren't far behind. Humanity's response to the Council's threats was taking shape in the void, hidden from the eyes of those who thought themselves superior. "Send word to all bases," he said quietly. "Triple shifts from now on. I want these ships ready to fly in 20 days. The Council thought they were dealing with primitive children who would bow to their demands. Soon they would learn that humanity had grown up in the dark, building monsters of metal and determination that would make the elder species question everything they thought they knew about their place in the galaxy." The Thunderchild's frame seemed to drink in what little light reached it, a promise of things to come. When she finally revealed herself, the galaxy would never be the same. The Council's warships looked like floating gardens of light as they approached Earth. Their bioorganic vessels pulsed with colors that had no names in human languages, each ship a masterpiece of alien engineering that had taken centuries to perfect. There were 50 of them, arranged in a formation that resembled a blooming flower. High Commander Vale stood on the command deck of the flagship, his crystalline form shimmering with anticipation. The humans had ignored all attempts at communication since the ultimatum. Now, one day before the deadline, the Council would show them the error of their ways. Primitive defenses detected, one of his officers reported. 10 small vessels near their moon. Minimal energy signatures, no significant weapons detected. Vale's crystalline body flickered with amusement. This was typical of younger species, a token show of resistance before accepting the inevitable. The Council had done this hundreds of times before. Some species fought harder than others, but all eventually submitted to the Council's wisdom. Open a channel to their command center, Vale ordered. Let us give them one final chance to avoid unpleasantness. The massive viewscreen showed Admiral Walker and several other human military officers. Vale noticed they seemed unusually calm for a species about to face superior forces. Humans of Earth, Vale began, his translated voice carrying the weight of countless victories. Your deadline expires in 20 hours. We detect your minimal defensive fleet. Surely you see the futility of resistance. Walker's face remained neutral. We see your ships, Commander Vale. Impressive display. I assume those are your finest vessels. Vale's body pulsed with pride. Indeed, the finest bioorganic warships in the galaxy, each one a living work of art, perfected over centuries. They are beyond your comprehension. Perhaps, Walker replied, though I notice you're keeping them just outside our defensive range. Cautious, aren't you? For someone so superior. Vale's crystalline form darkened slightly. The human's tone was all wrong. Where was the fear, the awe? We merely wish to avoid unnecessary damage to your facilities. Submit now, and we can begin your species' transition to a more enlightened state. Walker looked down at something off-screen, then back up with an odd smile. About that transition, we're going to have to decline. Then you leave us no choice, Vale declared. We will disable your defensive capabilities and... Commander Vale, Walker interrupted. Look behind you. Vale's sensors erupted with warnings. Massive gravity distortions were appearing throughout the asteroid belt. Dark shapes emerged from hiding places where they had been waiting, invisible to the Council's scans. The human ships were wrong. They violated everything Vale knew about proper shipbuilding. No elegant curves or living metal. No beautiful bioorganic systems. These were angular monsters of black metal, each one larger than his flagship. They looked like pieces of darkness had been cut into knife shapes and set loose in space. What are these abominations? Vale's voice lost its commanding tone. These? Walker's smile grew wider. Just some toys we've been working on. You see, Commander, while you were perfecting your beautiful ships over centuries, we were learning different lessons. We learned them in world wars, in cold wars, in space accidents that killed our people. We learned that space is dark and cold and likes to kill you. So we built our ships to match. The black ships moved with impossible grace for their size, spreading out in an attack formation that Vale's tactical systems couldn't properly analyze. His sensors couldn't get clear readings. It was as if the ships were absorbing his scanning beams. This is your final warning, Walker said, but his tone made it clear it wasn't a plea. It was a threat. Leave Earth space now, or we'll show you exactly why hiding our true capabilities was a smart military strategy. Vale's flagship automatically began backing away as its threat assessment systems registered the sheer amount of kinetic weapon ports opening up across the human vessels. These weren't the primitive weapons they'd expected. These were planet killers wrapped in metal that ate light. By the first light, Vale whispered as his sensors finally calculated the true size of humanity's hidden fleet. What have you done? The black ships advanced in perfect formation, and Vale realized that everything the Council thought they knew about humanity had been wrong. The EDS Thunderchild moved like a shark through space, leading Earth's fleet of 12 massive dreadnoughts. Their black hulls seemed to eat the light from nearby stars, creating patches of artificial darkness against the cosmic background. Marcus Stone stood at his engineering station aboard the flagship, monitoring the Void Steel armor's performance. "All ships report ready, Admiral," the communications officer announced. The command bridge of Thunderchild hummed with controlled tension as Admiral Walker studied the tactical display. "Look at them scatter," Walker said quietly, watching the Council's bioorganic ships breaking their flower-like formation. The beautiful alien vessels were retreating, their light-based weapons powering up in patterns of desperate beauty. The first alien shot came as a beam of pure energy, bright enough to briefly outshine the sun. It struck Thunderchild's bow directly. Instead of explosion or damage, the Void Steel hull simply darkened, absorbing the energy like a black hole swallowing light. "Power spike in the hull capacitors," Marcus reported, grinning at his readouts. "Their shot just charged our batteries to 120%. The armor is actually getting stronger." Walker nodded, then pressed the fleet-wide communication button. "All ships, execute Battle Plan 4. Show them what humanity's been building in the dark." The 12 Earth dreadnoughts moved in perfect synchronization, their black hulls reflecting nothing as they split into 4 attack groups. Each ship was 5 kilometers long, shaped like ancient naval destroyers, but scaled up to terrifying proportions. Their edges were sharp enough to look like they could cut space itself. "Council ships attempting to hail us," communications reported. "Put them on screen," Walker ordered. High Commander Vale's crystalline form appeared, its usual smooth patterns now jagged with what humans had learned to recognize as fear. "What are these abominations?" Vale demanded, his translator barely keeping up with his agitated tones. "These ships violate all known principles of proper space combat." Walker leaned forward in his command chair. "No, Commander. They'd violate your principles. You built beautiful ships that carry the wisdom of ages. We built weapons that carry the weight of our survival. You perfected the art of war. We prepared for the reality of it." As if to emphasize his point, the first mass driver array opened on Thunderchild's starboard side. It looked like a massive barrel built from overlapping black plates, each one designed to help accelerate its payload to relativistic speeds. "That's primitive kinetic weaponry," Vale said in disbelief. "You can't possibly think." The mass driver fired. A tungsten rod, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the space between ships in less than a second. It struck one of the Council's smaller vessels. The alien ship's energy shields flared beautifully, then failed completely as basic physics proved stronger than advanced alien technology. The vessel split in half, its organic components freezing instantly in the vacuum of space. "Impossible," Vale whispered. "Our shields are built on technology thousands of years old. They cannot." "Your shields stop energy weapons," Walker explained calmly as his fleet continued their advance. "They disperse plasma, deflect lasers, and absorb particle beams. But they weren't built to stop something as primitive as a solid object moving really, really fast. You forgot the basics while chasing perfection." The other Earth ships opened their mass driver arrays. Across the fleet, targeting computers locked onto the Council's suddenly vulnerable vessels. The black ships looked like ancient sea creatures opening their maws, ready to show the galaxy that humanity's primitive solutions could trump advanced alien technology. "Last chance, Commander," Walker offered. "Retreat now, return to your council, and explain that humanity won't be surrendering its right to self-defense. Or stay and learn exactly how many other primitive solutions we've turned into weapons that your sophisticated sensors can't even detect." The Council ships began emergency maneuvers, their beautiful organic forms trying desperately to escape the dead black predators that humanity had built in secret. But against the backdrop of space, Earth's vessels were in their element. The hunters had been unleashed, and the galaxy would never be the same. Space lit up with 1,000 colors as the Council ships launched their full attack. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and quantum disruption fields filled the void between the fleets. The alien weapons were beautiful to watch, like an aurora borealis turned deadly. None of it mattered. The Earth ships cut through the light show like black knives through silk. Their void steel hulls drank in every energy blast, growing stronger with each hit. The Thunderchild led the charge, its massive form somehow managing to look even darker against the backdrop of space. Hull energy absorption at maximum capacity, Marcus called out from his station. We're actually having to vent excess power now. Walker watched as his fleet executed a perfect pincer movement. The Council ships were trying to maintain their traditional combat formations, but those tactics were useless against an enemy that didn't behave like anything they'd fought before. Reading panic signals from their fleet, the sensor officer reported, their bioorganic ships are showing signs of extreme stress. They've never encountered anything that could ignore their weapons like this. A massive Council dreadnought, its hull glowing with patterns of golden light, moved to block Thunderchild's advance. It launched what appeared to be its strongest weapon, a beam of pure white energy that could have cut through a small moon. The beam struck Thunderchild dead center. For a moment, the black ship disappeared entirely in the glare. When the light faded, the Earth vessel emerged completely unscathed. If anything, its hull looked darker, greedier for more energy to consume. Their flagship is changing position, Tactical announced. They're trying to form a defensive sphere. Walker nodded. It was a good strategy. Against normal enemies. All ships, execute pattern strike. Show them what we can do with all this energy they've given us. 12 mass driver arrays opened simultaneously across the human fleet. But this time, something was different. The tungsten rods they fired were wrapped in shells of captured energy, stolen from the Council's own weapons. They moved at speeds that made their earlier shots look slow. The Council's defensive sphere shattered. Their energy shields, already strained from trying to stop conventional kinetic rounds, had no answer for projectiles wrapped in their own stolen power. 3 of their largest ships split apart, their beautiful organic components freezing instantly in the vacuum. Message from their flagship, communications reported. High Commander Vale is requesting immediate ceasefire. Walker watched as the remaining Council ships tried to regroup. Their formations were ragged now, their confident patterns replaced by desperate maneuvers. Some of their bioorganic ships were actually showing signs of fear response, their living hulls pulsing with patterns that looked like panic. "This is what you get for underestimating us," Walker said quietly, though he hadn't activated the comm channel. For thinking that beautiful meant better. For assuming younger meant weaker. The Thunderchild's sensors picked up more Council ships arriving from hyperspace, reinforcements responding to emergency calls. They emerged into normal space only to freeze in apparent shock at the scene before them. The pride of their fleet was in ruins, scattered by black ships that seemed to defy their most basic understanding of space combat. "Sir," Marcus called out, "what are your orders regarding the new arrivals?" Walker studied the tactical display for a moment. The new Council ships were holding position, not attacking but not retreating. They were witnessing something unprecedented. The defeat of elder species technology by what they had dismissed as primitive weapons. "Send to all ships," Walker commanded. "Launch simultaneous mass driver shots. Target the space between their vessels. Let's show them exactly what kind of firepower they're dealing with." The black ships fired as one. The space between the Council vessels lit up with relativistic projectiles that could have punched through planets. It was a demonstration, not an attack. But the message was clear. Humanity could destroy them all if they chose to. The Council ships began to retreat, their once proud formations now broken and scattered. They had come expecting to find children playing with toys. Instead, they had found monsters forged in darkness, waiting to teach the galaxy a lesson about underestimating the youngest species in known space. News of the battle spread through Council space like a shockwave. In the grand meeting halls of the starborn homeworld, the crystalline elders gathered to watch recordings of their defeat. Their bodies flickered with patterns of distress as they witnessed their finest ships broken by black vessels that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Impossible, one elder declared, its crystalline form dulled with shock. These humans, they hid their true capabilities from us. They let us think they were primitive. The council chambers, usually filled with the soft glow of ancient wisdom, now pulsed with fear. The recordings played again. Earth's black ships emerging from nowhere, their hulls drinking in energy weapons, their crude kinetic weapons splitting bioorganic vessels like ripe fruit. In distant corners of the galaxy, other elder species watched and worried. The gaseous collective, beings of pure energy who had looked down on solid matter for millennia, found themselves reconsidering their assumptions. The Matrix Lords, who had prided themselves on their predictive algorithms, discovered that their models had failed to account for human ingenuity. The reports are consistent. A messenger reported to the council. The human vessels, they call them dreadnoughts. Each one is capable of destroying a small moon. Their hulls are made of something they call void steel. It doesn't just resist energy weapons. It feeds on them. The High Speaker of the Starborn, who had so confidently dismissed humanity as children just days ago, watched the recordings in silence. The black ships moved through space like predators, their angular forms a stark contrast to the elegant curves of council vessels. They were ugly by council standards, brutal in their efficiency, and terrifyingly effective. More concerning, another elder added, is what these ships represent. The humans built them in secret, hiding their true technological level from our observations. How many other secrets do they have? What other weapons have they created in their darkness? Reports continued to flood in from across council space. The Matrix Lord's prediction showed 15 possible futures. In 12 of them, humanity became a dominant force in the galaxy within a century. The gaseous collective reported that their long-range sensors had detected similar construction patterns in other human-controlled systems. They weren't just building more ships. They were expanding. They must be stopped, one of the younger council members declared. We should gather all our forces, overwhelm them with numbers. No, the High Speaker interrupted, its voice carrying the weight of terrible realization. You don't understand. We already showed our best weapons. They didn't just survive them. They turned them against us. Our energy weapons made them stronger. Our sophisticated shields were useless against their primitive projectiles. A new message arrived, causing the chamber's light to dim. Human diplomats were requesting a meeting with the full council, not to surrender, as tradition demanded, but to negotiate. As equals. They're spreading. The messenger continued. 3 minor species have already reached out to Earth for protection. They're offering them technology, resources, choosing humanity over us. The council chamber erupted in patterns of distress. For thousands of years, they had guided younger species, controlled their development, ensured they followed the proper path. Now, in less than a week, humanity had shattered that system. Show the battle footage again, the High Speaker commanded. Show the moment their ships first appeared. The recording played once more. The black ships emerged from the asteroid belt like ancient sea monsters rising from the depths. Their hulls absorbed all light, their weapons defied conventional physics, and their very presence seemed to mock the Council's assumptions about proper technological development. We thought we were the teachers, the High Speaker said quietly. We thought we knew everything about warfare in space, but we forgot something important. Sometimes the student can become the master. And humanity. Humanity has been studying war for their entire existence. The council chambers fell silent as the implications sank in. The galaxy was changing, and the elder species could only watch as their carefully maintained order crumbled before Earth's metal horrors. The Grand Council chamber looked different now. Where once the elder species sat elevated above the floor, Now all seats were arranged in a circle. The black hull of the EDS Thunderchild could be seen through the chamber's crystal walls, a dark reminder of why things had changed. Admiral Walker stood beside Ambassador Reed as they faced the high speaker of the Starborn. The crystalline being's glow was more subdued than during their first meeting, its patterns showing what humans had learned to recognize as respect. "The terms are fair," the high speaker announced to the assembled representatives of 50 species. "Earth will join the Council as a full member, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Additionally, they will lead the newly formed Defense Committee." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some of the elder species showed signs of discomfort, but none dared object. Not with the Thunderchild's dark form floating outside, its mass driver arrays clearly visible. "We accept these terms," Ambassador Reed replied, his voice carrying across the chamber. "With one additional condition. All species, regardless of age or development, will have the right to defend themselves as they see fit." The high speaker's patterns shifted in what might have been a grimace. "You would have us abandon our guidance of younger species." "No," Walker stepped forward. "We would have you truly guide them. Teach, but don't control. Advise, but don't demand. The galaxy is too dangerous for any species to be kept defenseless." Through the chamber windows, more ships became visible. But these weren't Earth vessels. 3 younger species, formerly under Council protection, had arrived in ships clearly inspired by human designs. Their hulls weren't quite void steel, but they were dark and angular, built for war rather than beauty. "Your influence spreads quickly," one of the Matrix Lords observed. "These younger races, they embrace your military philosophy." "They embrace their right to choose," Reed corrected, "something you denied them for too long. Earth doesn't want an empire. We want a galaxy where every species can defend itself, where innovation isn't stifled by tradition." Marcus Stone, now wearing the formal uniform of Earth's Fleet Engineering Corps, operated a holographic display. It showed the new defensive strategies Earth was offering to share: void steel manufacturing techniques, basic mass driver designs, and ship construction methods that favored effectiveness over aesthetics. "We bring change," Walker said, addressing the entire chamber. "But not destruction. Earth remembers being defenseless, remembers looking up at the stars, and fearing what might come down from them. We won't let others feel that fear." The high speaker's crystalline form shifted through complex patterns before settling into something new: acceptance. Perhaps we grew too comfortable in our wisdom, too certain in our ways. The galaxy has changed, and we must change with it. The ceremony proceeded smoothly after that. Treaties were signed, agreements were made, and a new era of galactic politics began. The elder species learned to treat younger races as equals, while humanity shared their defensive technologies with any who asked. As the formal proceedings ended, Walker stood at a viewport, watching the growing fleet of dark ships. Not just Earth's vessels now, but those of a dozen young species, all learning to protect themselves in a dangerous galaxy. "They're calling it the Dark Fleet Doctrine," Reed said, joining him at the window. "Our philosophy of building ships that embrace the void rather than trying to outshine it. It's spreading faster than we expected." Walker nodded, watching as a newly built ship from one of the younger races practiced maneuvers. Its hull wasn't quite as dark as void steel, but it had the same predatory angles, the same emphasis on function over form. "We didn't just change the balance of power. We changed how the galaxy thinks about warfare." Outside, Earth's black ships floated like patient guardians, their hulls drinking in starlight. They were no longer monsters to be feared, but reminders that sometimes the darkness itself could protect you. The elder species had learned their lesson, and the galaxy was better for it. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage not as conquerors or subjects, but as teachers. They brought with them not just weapons, but wisdom, the understanding that true peace comes not from forced compliance, but from the ability of all to defend themselves. The age of the elder species' unchallenged dominion was over. The time of Earth's dark fleet had begun.